Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 28 of Material Issues. It's the program that's always interesting, sometimes controversial, but we try to make it as fun as possible. And always joining me, my good friend, he's live from a freeway somewhere outside of LA in an automobile. Mr. David Bash of the International Pop Overthrow. Good evening, David. How you doing tonight?
Good evening, Mark. What a long, strange trip it's been, for sure, both figuratively and literally. Um, I was supposed to be going to Hamilton, Ontario tomorrow to do IPO, but the COVID restrictions for Canada were not what I expected. Let's put it that way. Beyond the usual, you have to have the vaccine card and the negative COVID test, which I did. You also had to have a quarantine plan, and which means I would have had to have a place to quarantine. And I mean, I couldn't ask anybody to quarantine me, especially if somehow I had a positive test. So it's like I didn't know that was part of the protocol. But once I found that out, and also you can have the plan in place, get the approval, and then once you get to the border, they have the right to refuse it for whatever reason. And it's like I'm not taking that chance. I mean, I don't want to be in a situation where they throw me in some sort of quarantine environment and I can't even get to the shows. So it's like forget it.
I wish you would have told me that earlier, because I have a good friend of mine who's a cheerleader for the Hamilton Tiger Cats football team, and she's looking for someone to stay with her for 2 weeks in her apartment because her roommate's away. But I mean, it's too late now, obviously. But,
well, Jamie Vernon, if you're listening, Sharon, I hope you're not. So anyway, it's sort of bittersweet. I did trade some miles and took a really nice first class flight home. And here's what else. I was in the first class lounge at Kennedy Airport, and who should I see but Richard Branson? He went past me. I did a double take. I asked the waitress, "Was that Richard Branson?" She says, "Yes, it was." And then, hey, Andy. And then, so then I'm sitting at the table, and he shows up again, and stupid me doesn't try to get a photo with him. But my question to him would have been, what are you doing in the American lounge? Why are you not in your own lounge? What the hell?
Because he probably secretly owns the American lounge as well. So yeah, who knows?
Probably, yeah. But anyway, so I'm glad to be home, but at the same time, I wish I was going to Canada tomorrow. But it is what it is. Everything's all set. The club, the Casbah, is very pro. I'm sure the shows will go without a hitch.
Well, so if anybody's watching and they're curious, it's at the Casbah, Hamilton, Ontario, and the shows will go on. IPO will be there this weekend, so please go on out and support the band, support the acts that are there, and keep it alive, keep it going, because David is just getting back into the swing of things. And
yeah, I mean, New York went great. Boston went well too. I mean, the crowds could have been better, but we were using a new venue, which a lot of people weren't familiar with. And you know how people are. They don't want to go to a venue they don't know about, blah, blah, blah. So the crowds, except for Saturday, the crowd was respectable that night. But the bands were great. And this venue, it's a brewery that's becoming a music venue as well. So the vibe is awesome, and hopefully they can establish themselves. And by next year, when we're back there, everybody will know about it.
Right.
But
cool.
But it was really fun. And if Dave Kaufman is listening, I want to thank him very much for his hospitality, being able to stay with him in between IPOs, and then coming up to Boston and helping me with merch. Who's going to introduce? Yeah, I don't know. Well, Dave Rave is going to introduce the bands on Saturday. Hey,
Mr. Kaufman, there he is. Hi, Dave.
Yeah. So yeah, Dave Rave's going to introduce the bands on Saturday. I don't yet know about Thursday and Friday, but I think we're going to find someone. I have people there who are trying to do that. So we'll,
The show will
maybe
go
they can,
on.
somehow wire up my phone and I can do it from home. I don't know.
That'd
We'll
be
see
cool.
what that is.
Dave could hold up the his phone to the microphone.
Hey, whatever works. I don't care. I'll do it that way.
Well, yeah, that's good. It's all good. I'm glad the show's still going on though, but it's a shame.
No way would I not let the show go on. I mean, if it came down to it, I'd have gone in and risked it if it wasn't going to happen without me. But I knew it could.
Well,
So anyway,
real quick before we get into
okay.
our special guest tonight, this is the night before Thanksgiving, and a lot of people. We hope you have safe travels and enjoy your family and whatnot if you celebrate Thanksgiving. I'll be home hanging by myself essentially, but I did pick up two things that came in the mail today, which is going to keep me busy tomorrow, and I just wanted to show them real quick. This huge book, Another Tuneless Racket. Have you heard of this series at all, David?
Not.
This is volume number 3. I didn't know there was volume 1 and 2, but it's Punk and New Wave in the 70s, volume 3, the UK New Wave. There are there's 20 pages on the yachts in here.
Holy crap.
There is pages on 999, XTC, Squeeze, The Only Ones, The Records, Reckless Eric. Everybody's in here. I didn't even know it existed. 700 pages.
Send me the link on that. I want to buy
it. That's going to be great. I mean, I didn't even look to see if our special guest. No, he's not in here. But anyhow, great book. And check out what I also got. This was just released. Huge. Carpenters.
Oh wow.
Carpenters. Mike Lennox, Chris May with Richard Carpenter. He was just on Good Morning America talking about this huge coffee table book on the entire history of the Carpenters. That's pretty darn cool.
That is cool.
I got plenty of reading to do tomorrow, so that's going to keep me very busy. But now I'm going to throw it back over to you, David.
Well, yeah,
this is pretty cool.
Mark. Yeah, and Poole rhymes with cool, but it's really a pleasure to have this gentleman on Material Issues. I'm a huge fan, as I know you are, of his band Starry Eyed and Laughing. And for anybody listening, they had 2 great albums in the early to mid 70s. UK band from Bedford and then London. Just the name, Starry-Eyed and Laughing, a line from Chimes of Freedom by the Byrds. The name evokes just as much as the sound does. Very, very Byrdsy. And just chiming Rickenbackers, beautiful harmonies, great stuff. But that's not all, because they're still at it. They released an album not that long ago, a few months ago, and it shows that they've still got it. And it too is very Byrdsy as well. And there's some very cheeky titles in there where they're not shy about letting people know that that's one of their major influences. But anyway, it's great to have this gentleman on. He's a really cool guy, and we're going to introduce him now. So without further ado, would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to Mr. Tony Poole.
And Hi. There he is, all the way from the UK.
No, wait a minute. Maybe not the UK. Tony, are you coming from Mars tonight? You know what I mean by that.
You've listened to the album, haven't you? Yes, yeah. We were interviewed on a radio show in the middle of the night, and some lovely lady asked where we were from, and the bass player and the drummer were from Brighton and the South Coast. And then she was going, oh, yeah, yes. I don't think she was really listening. And I said, oh, and Ross and I are from Mars. And she said, oh, really? Do you get together very much? So it was kind of...
I know. I love that. How are you, Tony?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, actually. It's been a a rough few years for me. Since about 2013, I got this thing called polymyalgia, which kind of knocked me out for 2 or 3 years, actually. But since then, I've sort of got over it, as a lot of people don't. So, shout out to those poor people who don't. And I'm buzzing, actually. It's exciting having this record out. In 2018, actually, I did a record with a couple of other guys called Danny Wilson and Robin Bennett. And we had a record called Bennett Wilson Poole, which was, Starry and Laughing is kind of birdsy, but Bennett Wilson Poole sort of rhymes with Crosby, Stills and Nash, doesn't it? So it was kind of,
It's an excellent record, by the way.
Thank you. And then, having been almost kind of paralyzed for 2 years, I was out on the road with those guys for a couple of years. We did about 80 gigs in 2018, so it was great.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you one great story of that, actually. I'd be on stage, and after we'd done the show, somebody would come up to me and say, I last saw you on stage in 1974. And this was in 2018. And I just thought for a moment, I said, you know what? If you'd come up to me in 1974, it's like you would have said to me, I last saw you in 1930. That was the time difference. So I kind of felt like Rudy Valley or something,
Isn't that something?
I know.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. Unreal.
I love that. I love that phenomenon. I do that all the time in my head.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that a lot of 70s music, when I was growing up, that used to be called oldies, and now the 70s music has seemed to have moved past that. Now the 80s is oldies, and the 90s is getting into that era too. It's amazing. It's amazing to live through it. Yeah.
It's strange. I think music from the 30s, apart from Paul McCartney's sort of revisits, with Honey Pie and When I'm 64, and even Maxwell Silverhammer, the music has stayed pretty much the same. I mean, people are still doing that, still inspired by the Byrds, aren't they, and the Beatles and stuff. So,
Sure.
That thread has kept going somehow, and through David's work, with all these, supporting all these bands that haven't quite risen to the surface. So there is that, I don't have to sing through a megaphone. That's one good thing.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, as David said, big fan of the two CBS albums from Starry-Eyed and Laughing. And when he told me a couple of weeks ago we got Tony Poole, I was just like, what? Really?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's what we like to do with this show. We like to have what really moments. And Tony, you're a what really moment. I mean, I'm
going to have a badge made. I like that. I'm going to have a badge made. That sounds great.
That's awesome.
So how did a young UK musician become so enamored with the Byrds?
Obviously, I was a teenager at the right time of the Beatles. That was the first thing. But I guess, like I've discovered from many people, actually, as soon as I heard Mr. Tambourine Man, on the radio in the UK, which went to #1, there was something about that sound, the Rickenbacker and the harmonies and the words and everything. And that was it. I guess from then on, I judged every music on that by that bar, just that kind of thing. I'd listen to West Coast. I'd check out West Coast groups like Clear Lights and obviously Buffalo Springfield. It's a Beautiful Day. But you'd always be listening for have they got a 12-string in there? Do they sound like the Byrds? It's kind of the thing.
And you are responsible for the 12-string in Starry-Eyed and Laughing.
That's right. Yeah.
That is
you. I guess I don't know how that came about, because originally I was at school with this guy called Ross McGeaney. We were the sort of the two founders of the band, and he'd actually managed to get hold of a 12-string that belonged to Pete Townsend before we'd started Starry-Eyed and Laughing. Wow. But it wasn't very good because the neck had been snapped off at some point. I wonder why. It was so that didn't last very long. But then eventually, somehow or other, I ended up with playing I got my Rickenbacker in 1973, and it was a 67 model. It originally belonged to a guy called Steve Peregrine Took, who played with Mark Bolan in Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, that's what I know the name.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, he had a band called. He was more than a percussion player. You know, he had a band called Shagrat, and he was the previous owner of my guitar. So you know, I kind of follow that line of things in there. And
the big question is, do you still have the guitar?
Absolutely, of course.
Can we see it?
Actually, it's upstairs, but I haven't got it.
Okay.
I've got another one here, which is kind of not that one, but
nice.
Which is
Beautiful.
Yeah, which is, yeah. I mean, I could get it, but I won't waste our time by doing that. Yeah, no. I still got it. It's celebrated. What would it be? 53 years, I think. It's 53 years old. You know, it's a little, you know, road worn, but it's still the best Rickenbacker. It's better than this new one. You know.
I'm glad you still have it, because we hear so many stories from musicians that have been around, you know, from the 60s, 70s, that are like, if I would have still had my guitars or that I had back then, because they, for whatever reason, they moved on from them. So thank goodness you still have it. That's great. That's awesome.
It's been there. I think it'll be like a pharaoh. It'll be buried with me. You know, I'll be
just clutch it like this.
I just want to say, Tony, want to say before we get into anything else, Lady Came from the South is one of the best songs by anybody ever.
Oh, thank you, man. That's wonderful of you to say. You know, who knows where, you know, in those days we were, as you gather, you know, the Byrds were the big influence, but there was others. When our bass player Ian Whitmore, the big Moby Grape fan, you know, and we like people like Badfinger, and we were playing, you know, the colleges and mostly college gigs in those days, and in those gigs you had to be doing kind of rock stuff, you know, so you couldn't get away with doing gentle kind of folk rock things. So we did put a few of those things in there, just because that's what the audience needed, you know. I don't think we actually played Lady Came from the South very often live, actually. It was kind of, you know, it was a little bit too thoughtful for, you know, a crowd that was quite beard up. You know?
Yeah, right.
Well, you know what? You also had really cool harmonies throughout your songs, and the background things going on with the vocals, which how did because the only thing I've ever seen live is that Rock Palace live thing on YouTube, which is great. And for some reason you pull out what Oh Susanna and Foggy Mountain Breakdown and a lot of like Deep South kind of things. I'm like, where'd this come from? But was it difficult to pull off some of the vocal stuff live for you guys early on in the early 70s?
Actually, strangely not, our first manager was a hi-fi freak, and he bought us a PA, which was like tannoy gold. It was like a hi-fi system that we took out on the road with us. So it was always kind of a thing. The thing in those days, you know, you didn't have in-ears or anything like that, so the fallback was always a bit weird. But generally speaking, you know, we were kind of hi-fi at that kind of level. You know, even in the kind of pubs and clubs and things, you know. And we always loved those things. I mean, Ross and I were singing harmonies. Our first band at school was called the Chimes with a Y. Right. I wonder why, you know. And then we got Ian Whitmore came in, who had actually come into the management office to audition for another band, actually called A Collection, and he heard a tape of ours, and then you know, said that's the band for me. And he came out on the road with us as a roadie for 2 weeks. And we'd learn all the harmonies, and that 3-part thing sort of came about from that, you know. Obviously, we were just post Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young as well, so that was kind of a big thing, you know.
Did you know that there was a girl group from Los Angeles in 1966 called the Chimes with a Y also?
Wow!
They have a great song called "He's Not There Anymore." It's on that Pebbles or the Highs in the Mid '60s series. I'll have to get you a link of that.
Please do. That would be amazing. I mean, I mean, it was kind of self-evident that if you like the Byrds and you call yourself the Chimes, you'd have to put a Y in there. You know?
For sure.
But how cool! How cool!
Yeah, that's
They're
awesome.
I bet you they're better looking than us. You know, that's all.
Well, yeah, I guess.
The production value, Tony, on both your CBS labels is fantastic. I mean, the mix could be a little more up, but really clear, really crisp. The guitar just stands out. The vocals are as clean as can be. I'm really impressed with just how well recorded. Who engineered these things? Who produced this in the studios? Well,
thank you very much for that. Actually, it's an interesting thing. I mean, firstly, we were lumped in with this thing called pub rock at the time, but I know there's a good friend of mine called Will Birch, who was in the Cursive Flyers Records. You know, he complimented us. He said we were the band that kind of got the sound, you know, because a lot of the other bands didn't quite get that production thing. But we were produced by this guy called Dan Loggins, who was Kenny Loggins' brother, actually, and an American transplanted to London, you know, and at the time he was the head of A&R and he produced our records. But the thing about the first record, which was really curious and fascinating, was the engineer was a guy called Mike Ross Trevor, and the year before he'd engineered the Byrds recording Farther Along in the same studio in London. And
oh wow, okay.
And when we were in the studio, it blew my mind. Because the Byrds were there, down in the basement, they had the archives, and he pulled out a copy tape of the Mr. Tambourine Man album, because they'd been using it to kind of get the reference of the Rickenbacker sound. So we heard that sound through the speakers at the CBS studios, you know. And then Mike, you know, as an engineer, just somehow managed to emulate that sort of sound, you know. And it was a pretty, you know, it was a major recording studio. It wasn't quite Abbey Road, but it was as big as Abbey Road, you know. So I think that was probably our great benefit, that we signed to CBS Columbia. It was CBS in the UK, and then they actually gave us those production values, you know. It's interesting. The second record, Dan again produced that, but this time around we actually recorded it at a studio in Wales called Rockfield. I don't know, you've probably heard of that.
Yeah, we know Rockfield for sure.
Yeah, and then we had like 2 weeks down there, and actually Dan was sort of it was a fantastic producer to have, because he let us have free reign, really, you know. And he added some harmonica and stuff, but in Rockfield he'd come down every few days or something, but let us get on with it, you know. And we were mostly, I think the sound was mostly made by the engineer. There's a lovely chap called Bill Aitken, who was a BBC engineer at the time. So again, you know, we were very lucky to have some high quality kind of engineering in those days, you know, for those things. But,
how did you get the deal with CBS? You know, we've had other people on, and you know, one of the Todd Taylor was talking about one of his bands he's also from the UK, how they went down to the label and were in costume, and they got to see the head of A&R.
They walked in and said, "Hair."
They just walked in. Something that you could never conceive of now. Just walking in to an A&R or to a head of a label's office. How did it happen for you?
Well, that's interesting. I think we were lucky, because Dan Loggins was from LA, and he'd come over to UK, and I don't think he ever got over the UK time, actually. He used to say that. But he was having a great success with bands you may have heard of, like ABBA and the Wombles and stuff like that. But he always had a hankering for some sort of West Coast music. And by chance, I think before us, he'd actually signed a band called Home. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They were another kind of folky.
I have their album. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I think our manager had been putting out tapes, you know, we'd made. I think Lady Came From the South was on our demo tape, actually. And Dan heard it, and then he came to a gig in London at London Imperial College, where we were supporting a band called Vinegar Joe, which had Robert Palmer and Elkin Brooks in it. And so that was our audition. It was a live gig in London, you know, and he came backstage. Actually, I was curious, actually, because on that particular gig, my top G string on my Rickenbacker went out of tune on one of the, I think we were doing When You Walk in the Room, And I was quite kind of bold in those days, and I stopped the show and said, I've got to tune this guitar, you know. And I remember when he came backstage, he was really impressed with that, you know, that I actually did that. And so you know, it was, I mean, we didn't have to walk into any record companies or anything, but I know people did that. I think I read the story that Elvis Costello got his deal by playing on the back of a truck outside of the label in Soho Square or something. I don't know if that's true, but so yeah, and you know, it was a kind of music that Dan was in Dan's heart, I think, you know, that we were doing. It's kind of transplanted, you know, bizarrely, we came from foggy South London, but we were trying to make it sound like we came from, you know, like we just played in Cyros or something, you know, that was kind of the,
Right.
It's just amazing. As David said, we keep hearing these stories of, we went down to the label, we walked in, we said, here, we, you know, and for you guys, you had to have the songs, and you have to have the talent. I mean, that isn't understood. You couldn't be really bad, but you just happened to have the right person at the right time with the right connections, and it worked.
Yeah.
And many times it's just people, places, and things. Exactly, you know, the stars lining up, and
Mark, you're absolutely right. I think there are so many, you know, unsung heroes that just the stars didn't align for, you know, and and they align in different levels, I guess, you know. I mean, for us, we were lucky enough to sign to a major label, and they let us do 2 albums, you know, and then we did some singles with Flo and Eddie as well, you know, after that. That was all through Dan. But these days, you know, if the first single hadn't been a hit, we'd have been out back playing on the street corner, you know. That would have been
and the first single was "Money's No Friend of Mine."
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's what was the other question I had for you? Well, I love "Nobody Home." That's one of my favorites. I think that was the second or third.
That was the second single.
Second single. Okay. Yeah. That's just such a cool song. Later on in the 70s, a band that I love called Klaatu, and that song always reminds me of Sir Army Suit era Klaatu. It just has that wonderful kind of upbeat, some breaks with the vocals. It's just a wonderful, wonderful track. I can play that on repeat all day long and not get tired of it. But you know, let's talk about, you know, that first album. So you record the album, it's released on CBS. Were you guys touring extensively behind that? Were you opening up for some acts that you could name drop a little bit here? What was that period like?
Yeah, well, in fact, we got the deal around. I think we'd already done about 80 or 90 gigs. You know, we were quite sort of road worthy, I guess. You know, at that time, wasn't quite Hamburg, you know, but it was definitely a bit of a baptism. And so even when we were recording the album, we had to actually just take some days off the gigs. But we were mostly, as I said earlier, we were mostly playing colleges. And usually we would be playing, you know, behind people like Russ Ballard. I think I remember, I can't even remember. I remember once we played behind Al Stewart, who was a folks kind of English folk singer, you know. And that was cool because for the encore, we joined him as like he was pretending to be Bob Dylan, and we did "She Belongs to Me" or something, and we were the Birds behind him. You know, it was kind of Al Stewart. So yeah, it was usually supporting people. I mean, you know, I mentioned Steve Peregrine Trip, but we also played behind a lot of these things, college things. They'd be sort of set up like very late at night. And one time we played supporting T-Rex, Mark Bolan and T-Rex. You know, it was kind of thing.
Wow.
I think Hudson Ford was another name.
Oh yeah, that they would actually. Yeah, I can see that, Bill. And I wanted to ask you if you ever played with the band Unicorn, because they were very like-minded. Were you ever on a bill with them?
Do you know? Never, no. And I think they were maybe a couple of years before us, but definitely followed in their footsteps. You know, there was a few other bands around that time that we did play with. Stack Ridge, I don't know if you remember them. They were.
I love Stack Ridge. Oh my God.
Stack Ridge. I think, Gypsy. I don't know if you know Gypsy. They had a 12-string as well. We played. We supported Gypsy. I'm trying to think of some other names. Decameron was another kind of folky group, but it was odd. Sometimes the bills would be really strange. We'd support people like Stray. I don't know, they were kind of heavy rock, or the Groundhog. You know, the Groundhogs. You know, they were kind of kind of heavy kind of groups. But you know, audiences were fairly apart from being drunk, they were very accommodating, which probably helped, really. But yeah, I think you say we supported it, but we were it was literally in parallel. We were just gigging to kind of stay alive, basically, and the record was a sort of at the time, I didn't really realize how great it was to have got a major record deal, because a lot of bands didn't quite get that. There were a few. We preempted the punk era and the independent label sort of situation, actually. So that was kind of a bit easier when Stiff came along and Chiswick, and those kinds of labels. Yeah. But the two didn't really interconnect. Basically the label would be trying to get us on the radio, and in the UK at that time it was a very closed kind of circuit. We'd have the record out on a Friday, and then the pluggers would go into the BBC radio, and by Tuesday it was dead. That was it.
Wow.
If it wasn't playlisted, it was dead. That was kind of it.
Well, what was the highest chart position you had with any of the singles from the first album?
I have no idea. I really don't know. Actually, no. We did. There were only 2 singles off there. By the way, I love Klaatu. I thought they were amazing. And that was. Nobody Home Song was awesome. That was kind of that was me sort of being a bit Beatlish. I think I even get in a Bang Bang in there. So it was kind of it was from that particular thing. But I think that record actually did better than the first one. Money Is No Friend of Mine was really kind of prophetic. It just became our mantra.
In fact, it's not even in the same room with me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I think
Tony, you changed your sound quite a bit on the second album.
We lost David there.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Say it again, David. Say it again.
Yeah, I interrupted you.
I was saying, no, it's okay. You guys changed your sound quite a bit on Thought Talk. It's definitely heavier. The harmonies are still there, but it's not nearly as birdsy, and the title song's even kind of prog in a way. What was the motivation behind the change of sound?
I think it was just an evolution, actually. I think there was always a kind of element of getting away from them, because we used to do bird songs occasionally, but not a lot. We kind of sort of evolved into just doing our own songs. When we first started, we'd do Mr. Tambourine Man and Chimes of Freedom. I think we always did Chimes of Freedom, actually, obviously because of the name. Occasionally we do, wig outs on 8 Miles High and stuff like that. But generally it was kind of trying to not be the Ruttles, not be kind of, although I love the Ruttles, I'd love to be in the Ruttles. but so maybe it was something to do with that. It was just a sort of evolution, I think you'd say, and I see a question here. You erupting with the pub rock scene. Shall I answer the question from Andy Hartley there?
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah. Actually, strangely enough, not at all, because I always thought pub rock was kind of a bit R&B-ish, a bit Stones kind of stuff, because that was what people wanted to hear in pubs. And as I say, our songs were a little bit more folk rocky in that way. We had a few like that. But the other thing was, I didn't really know. The only band that we knew was called Chili Willy and the Red Hot Peppers, who also were lumped into that, and they weren't really a pub rock band either. They do fantastic like swing, Western swing stuff. Do you know them, Chili Willy and the Red Hot Peppers? I guess you might.
I've seen the album, but I've never heard them.
I don't know it.
The lead guy was a guy called Phil Listman. He actually, weirdly enough, he was almost in Starry Eyed and Laughing before we'd started. We knew each other, but he went off to San Francisco and formed a band called The Residents. I think it was The Residents. Was
The
it?
Residents? Okay.
Yeah. So it was him.
No
Sadly,
way. Really?
Yeah. He went from that to there. But to get back to the question, we were playing pubs. So you could call us a pub rock band because those were the venues that you could play. There were pubs and college. The college circuit was the big thing, actually. That was, I don't know if it exists anymore, but that was the place that kind of kept us alive. Yeah. So But I never felt like a
Call
punk
him and
rock
knock
band.
me off. All right.
David's flipping his phone around there. We got it.
Oh, right.
He'll be back. He'll be back. He just sometimes he hits the wrong button. Now, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, when you signed with CBS, was that a 2-album deal initially? And so you knew there was a second album coming.
Actually, not at all. In fact, when I think because Dan had this kind of the pressures of signing racks that would get in the charts, and make money for CBS, basically, or the mafia, as you might want to call it. Have you ever read Hitman? But so I think we were only signed for a singles deal, and we only recorded 3 songs originally. But when we were in the studio, we got on so well with Dan that he rolled it over into an album. And then the second album must have come about during the course of that being out. I guess, in those days, there was a little bit more faith in things being able to be evolved and developed and whatever. So it was literally, I think it might even be similar to the Byrds thing. They only had signed for a single originally, but we just recorded 3 songs.
That's why I was kind of asking how high the 2 singles did in the charts. Was that what led to a second album, or was that more of a growth and development type deal, which it sounds more like growth and development? Yeah,
I think you've got it. Actually, the first single, although it didn't get in I don't know if it got in the top 50. I don't have any charts from those days, but it got a lot of great attention, a lot of great press. And John Peel loved it. He played it a lot. So I think all of that helped the record company kind of go, oh, maybe we've got something here, Right. And, we were, at least they didn't try and put us in makeup and the glam rock kind of.
Well, you were right there on in that era and right on the cusp of getting in. So, it's good you weren't in platform shoes and silver makeup and things like that. But you definitely had a good look to you. You had that Birdsian folk rock of the hair and just the stage presence. It was all there. One thing I wanted to ask you: the primary songwriters for the band, was that you and Ian primarily, or did you write separately? How did you do your songs?
Actually, originally it was, as I say, it was me and a fellow called Ross McGeaney, who I went to school with. I'd known him since we were 6 years old, actually. And we wrote songs together and separately. And then as we formed with Ian, he brought some of his own songs in. And then, we were mostly writing individually, but we'd kind of occasionally collaborate on things. If you're out in a scrummy hotel, somewhere in the north of England and you've got nothing to do, maybe we'd come up with a song together kind of thing. I think I wrote the title track of the second album with him, and actually I didn't write it with him. I'd written the main part of it. It's a wordless thing, and then Ian just came up with a middle eight. It's really weird. I did see a fascinating interview with Paul McCartney yesterday, because he's got this book, the lyrics, out now. And what he says is kind of true. Songwriting is a thing that's it's a magical thing. You can't really. Maybe the guys in Tin Pan Alley did, but normally it's just something that comes to you as it went. So eventually we'd end up with like 3 writers in the band. That was kind of how it worked.
So who wrote? Who wrote "Nobody Home"? That's just one.
That's me. That's me.
Okay.
I usually wrote the songs which had a little bit of. "Nobody Home" is. I like the idea of having a song that's saying to somebody, "Stay away from me," done to a kind of upbeat, happy-go-lucky kind of tune, really.
Well, I'm glad I picked the right song to really like, since you're the guest tonight.
Anyway, actually, I love some of Ross's songs. Ross usually wrote the songs that were all about, broken hearts. It was kind of like the Gene Clark version of the song of the band. So I love his songs as well. But yeah, you did choose the right song.
So now the second album, as David said, it came out and it was heavier. There was a little bit more psychedelia involved with it. Now, was that as a result of some of the bands you were touring with? I think I might have lost your connection there, Tony. You're back?
There we go. I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here. I don't think actually we were influenced by any of the bands that we toured with at all. You know, it was like just independent strands. But I think they possibly Ian Whitmore, the bass player, who'd been more of a if you could characterize him as a Moby Grape fan, maybe he had more of an influence on that and brought in those kind of slightly rockier tracks to the thing.
Because Flames in the Rain is really it doesn't come across as heavy on the record. It comes across heavier on the live Rock Palace show, but I can imagine live that was probably pretty heavy.
Yeah, that was kind of almost Grateful Dead like. You know, you kind of go on for minutes, not hours. They would probably go on for hours, but yeah, that was kind of a.
That was just the opening drum roll that went on for about an hour, right?
Yeah.
So that song, it's like, when I first heard that, it was just like,
yeah.
It's like, all right, I'll go get a soda and come back, and it's still going on.
That was our drummer, Mike Wackford. I mean, Mike Wackford. I mean, he was born to be a drummer with that name, wasn't he, Mike Wackford? I mean, Mike sadly died about 5 years ago, actually. But
oh, really? God bless.
His hero was Ginger Baker. So it was kind of that was his chance to kind of do that kind of stuff, on there. We actually, when I was during the Bennett Wilson Pool in 2018, we sometimes did Flames in the Rain and another song of mine called One Foot in the Boat. And we got a fantastic drummer called Finn Kenny, and he listened to the track and he just couldn't believe it, what he'd have to try and kind of copy.
Oh, I love it. Well, I want to jump kind of forward to so we can talk about before our time runs up the new album, Bells of Lightning.
Bells of Lightning, yeah, sure.
I mean, how did this come about? Or did you just decide, well, it's time after 50 years, maybe we should do another album, or talk to me about the genesis of a brand new album.
That's interesting. I mean, it does seem, as I think I put in the notes, I think David Crosby took 18 years between his two, his first and second albums. So, I think we took 45, which is a bit long.
Here's to album number 4.
Yes. Right, it may well be actually. I mean, it was just I've kept in touch with Ian Whitmore, and we played in lots of incarnations and gigs down the years, and we actually started talking about sort of maybe doing another album in 2013. I think we had a session actually, but it was about 1 week before I got this thing called polymyalgia, and so I was kind of out of action for a few years. And then we were going to, and I had a bit of, was busy with Bennett Wilson Poole, but then in 2019, we got back together and just thought, let's do it, and my idea was that it was kind of a bit of unfinished business, in terms of what we could have done. There is one song on there that Ian wrote when we were in the States on tour, actually. And another song I think is also a song he wrote when we came back, which is on the Rock Palace thing, the live version of it. It's called Faith, Hope and Charity.
Yep.
But apart from that, they're all new songs, and they, I mean, I guess sometimes you think songs you've written fit a certain kind of sound, and on this particular one, I just wanted to kind of close the chapter on us being the Byrds. And my thing to Ian was, let's make make the record that would be our third record, coming back to the first record sound, but also what would the Byrds have made if they hadn't gone on to Sweetheart of the Rodeo? Like, like just that thing. And as you probably, maybe other people have mentioned, there's quite a lot of little nods to the Byrds in there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's totally conscious. It's totally, it's
go ahead.
It's not again, I don't want to be a pastiche in any way, because I think our original songs are not trying to copy anything like that, but just the sound, and the sort of the production kind of thing of it was kind of my idea of how we do it.
Because I know what's the one song, "Set Me Free from This Lost Highway."
Yes, that's the first track. Yeah.
Very. Is that you who wrote that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I can say it right now. I put it on YouTube, and I got the idea for the song because I read about this establishment in Virginia where they have like an archive of all the movies, which have this, which show the kind of idea of America, and I had this idea of this guy in a post-apocalyptic kind of America, something like a post 2016, basically. Seeing it and going, oh, this is what America could have been, so that was my idea. But then musically, I just thought, oh, why don't I just do these two chords? And somebody on YouTube did say, are you giving McGuinn and Hillman some songwriting credits for this?
Well, I mean, honestly, there's about 3/4 of a segment of Rock and Roll Star,
I would like to think it's
it's an homage in the nicest way. So
I would characterize it. I mean, obviously, I'll if they come for me, I'll send McGuinn money, whatever. But it was conscious, and you know what? I was thinking about how George Harrison took the riff from Bells of Rimney and made a song called "If I Needed Someone," and it's literally the same riff.
Sure.
And so I'm in good company there, and even the Byrds, they took a song that I Feel a Whole Lot Better. They took the riff from Needles and Pins, which was the Searchers, and they're big fans of it. So I feel it's in that line of, like you say, homage, really, and
well, it's all been done, whether it's from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, it's all been done. You can go back and find songs from the 30s and 40s that are virtually identical to a lot of songs in the 60s and 70s.
Really,
and it's not like those songs were never heard by these people.
Exactly.
It's just your own little take on it. And
yeah, exactly. One of the weirdest things actually was I love the Lovin' Spoonful, and I remember when I first heard Daydream, and I used to do it on live things, but I read somewhere that actually is a tune from the 30s called "Got a Date with an Angel."
Yes.
So what you're saying is absolutely right, and it doesn't detract at all.
No, it doesn't detract at all, and it's really, really hard to come up with something that has never been at least slightly like something else. It's just
Exactly.
it's the way you sing it, it's the lyrics, it's the harmony, it's the way it's all put together. So the fact that I hear from that track, I hear a little bit of Rock and Roll Star. That's just a little bit of Rock and Roll. It's absolutely cool.
Thank you.
Let me jump in here since
Hey, David.
What happened was actually, I got a phone call and it knocked me completely off. And I tried to get back on, and you guys sounded like you were talking at about 8 RPMs. So I figured I better wait till I get home. Tony, I don't know if you guys spoke about this yet, but I have to know how it was working with Flo and Eddie, because those are two of the most hilarious guys ever.
I'll tell you the story. That we had a US tour, and we were booked in at the Bottom Line in New York, supporting Flo and Eddie for 3 nights. So we got to know them, and that show, as you say, it was just mind blowing. They were doing a thing. The album they were promoting was called "Illegal, Immoral, and Fattening," and it was kind of and it was taking a bit of a spoof of lots of people like George Harrison, John Denver, we got to know them, and then after we'd done the second album, I became really good friends with Dan Loggins, our producer, and he wanted to carry on with us. And at one point, he suggested we maybe could do some work with a couple of guys you may have heard of called Bruce Johnson and Terry Melcher, who had a production company. And I can't remember what it was called, but I don't think that came about. But
Equinox.
Somehow or other,
I think it's called Equinox.
Equinox, exactly. It was Equinox, yeah. I don't know if you even heard what we were doing, but it would have been a great fit. I mean, wow, Doris Day's son, producer of the Byrds. But then somehow or other, we managed to get Flo and Eddie were on CBS as well. And so it was an easy thing. I think they were on tour in Australia, and they just stopped off in London on the way, and I had just the best time ever with those guys. They were just amazing. As you say, funny, and they even sang some backing vocals on the tracks. I had this song called "Song on the Radio," and I remember they sang the backing vocals on it, and it was all like, you can hear your song on the radio. And then towards the end of the track, they were starting to ad lib, like, you can take a shower with your radio. And unfortunately, it faded before that was heard, because but yeah, no, absolutely. It was an absolute highlight. They were absolutely amazing, and they kind of developed our sound even more. There's still the 12 stringers that was in there, but they added some orchestration, to some tracks, and we did a song called Saturday, which was really rocky. In fact, the guitar riff, which I did, I think, was later on used by a band called the Sex Pistols. It was like, I don't know if they've heard it, but it was the same guitar riff. I won't take credit for that, but yeah, yeah, it was amazing. I do remember they bring in like a 4 or 5 piece string section to do the orchestral parts that were actually written by a guy called Tony Meehan, who was the drummer in the Shadows.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We had Tony Meehan in the control room, and I'm going, wow, it was just unbelievable. Another visitor actually was Greg Shaw. He was around at the time as well, and just meeting him was just amazing.
Wow.
But they'd get the string players to play, and they'd go, it wasn't quite right. Can you do it again? And then they'd do it a third time. But what they were doing, secretly, was recording them 3 times to make it sound like a full orchestra. And,
you mentioned Greg Shaw. He was an amazing man. I was privileged to know him pretty well. And in fact,
really?
he had contacted me only about a week before he passed, asking if I wanted to work on a project with him. And I was going to do my music festival. So I said, when I come back, let's get it started. And then he passed in between. It was so sad.
Yeah, I just met him that one time. He was a lovely guy, and I think he wrote something about the sessions in Who Put the Bomb, I think, or something. There might have been a little snippet or something. So, it felt good. It felt like if there was a kind of underground, that you were kind of connected to it somehow in a way, especially hooking up with Flo and Eddie, and I knew them from the Turtles. I mean, those songs. I do remember actually when we were recording. And I was playing the Rickenbacker, and I remember Mark Volman saying, wow, I always wanted to be recording a Rickenbacker 12 string. I think the Turtles did so. Yeah, no, it was just an absolute buzz, to be connected to your heroes.
Oh, sure. My gosh, David, whenever you dropped out, we were talking about the new album and things along those lines. Tony, are you still, or have you started to play out at all, or did you stop playing for a while? Are you still in the pubs?
No, not in the pubs. Actually, I was through the 80s and 90s. I did a lot of like pub and wine bar kind of gigs, solo and then also as a duo with Ian Whitmore from the Starry Eyed. At one time we still played in pubs. I remember making a sign, not that it would have meant anything to anybody, saying Tony Paul and Ian Whitmore, ex Starry Eyed and Laughing. It would be like saying ex nobodies.
Far from it. Look, I as you mentioned, I deal with so many bands who never did grab the brass ring, some of whom probably could in a different time. You managed to have 2 albums on a major label. I mean, that makes you far from nobodies. That's an amazing accomplishment. It really is. So many of these bands would give their left arm to be able to do that.
And they were very good albums too. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They didn't suck.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I guess in the 2000s, I was mostly kind of producing records. Somehow or other, I got into that. I was always was more interested in that part of it. Even when we were recording, and I had a spell of doing that. But then with the advent of the internet, it kind of helped get us all connected in another way. So I suddenly discovered all these people that had actually heard of the band. And obviously prior to that, you didn't know, we didn't get any royalty checks from CBS or statements or anything like that. So so that kind of helped. And I guess since about 2010, I've been gigging quite regularly. And then, as I say, 2018, I was out on the road for more dates than I can, like a third of the year, 80 dates,
Wow.
you know, with Bennett Wilson Poole. And then 2019 pretty much as well, you know, all around, but with the full band, you know. And the plan, obviously, a certain, you know, global event has affected us all in the last couple of years. But the plan is that Ian and I will go out as Starred and Laughing. We'll just we've got an idea, yeah.
I'm rubbing my hands together, Tony, because Mark knows exactly what I'm thinking.
I'm not even going to laugh loudly.
And I have to ask, when I bring International Pop Overthrow back to the Cavern in May of 2022, and we already have our dates, I would be honored to have you guys play. We can talk about this offline, of course, but just know I'm putting it out there. You guys are more than welcome to be part of the festival.
David, what an honor. Thank you. I mean, I'll say yes right away. That's exactly, safety allowing, that's exactly the time we're thinking of doing it. We're doing a vinyl version of the record, and that should be out about then as well. So it'll just be perfect. Thanks so much. I would love it. Did you do that in Liverpool?
It'll be at the Cavern, yeah.
At the Cavern Club, Liverpool, yep.
It'll be our 18th year doing shows at the Cavern.
Wow. Okay, well, it's a date. You know, I'm putting a ring on it. You know.
All right. Thank you.
And he packs them in. It actually, it's probably gonna have people that there's Andy. He's responding. Excellent. Yeah. People that whose jaws would be dropping when they heard that.
Now, Andy has a band called Searching for Sylvia, who has played International Pop Overthrow many times. They're really good.
I'll check them out. I'll definitely check them out. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I will for sure. Yeah, what you're doing with that IPO thing is amazing. I have to say, I've just been in awe of it. You know, I've obviously followed it over the years. So, you know, it's kind of what we do. You know, and even being on the road in 2018 and reconnecting with previous bands. You know, you realize this. You know, the world that you see in the media is one thing, but underneath it all, there's all these real humans, you know, that are kind of connected, you know, on a human level, you know, as David Crosby would say. It's definitely fantastic, you know. And
what do you think of David Crosby's new album? It's been getting so much good press.
Yeah, I've loved everything he does. I have to admit, in our day, Ross McGeaney, my good pal, was a big Steely Dan fan, but I never quite got them. You know, it was just a thing. They had a fantastic sound and amazing words and songs, but there was something just didn't quite connect with me. And I think David Crosby's a big fan of Steely Dan, and some of his stuff leans that way. My album, probably of the century, is If I Could Only Remember My Name. You know, I mean, that's kind of. Oh, yeah. And when he's doing stuff like that, I love it. You know, it's just great. But anyway, the guy's 80. You know, and it just gives us hope. You know, that's.
Oh, for sure.
Just yeah.
You'll still be doing it when you're 80. I'm sure of that.
I feel I will, actually. Yeah, I do. You know, it's interesting. You know, the age numbers kind of don't. The same for you guys, I'm sure. You know, we're still like 17 or 18 in our brains. You know, we're still. You know, I'm still a fan. You know, I check out everything that's around. You know, there's Beachwood Sparks. You know, and I think there's a few bands in LA that. You know, I check them out immediately as soon as I hear they're doing stuff. And
you know, there are a lot of bands out there who could very well have been influenced by Starry Eyed and Laughing. One band from Cumbria that we've had at the festival, they're called Kontiki Suite.
Yes.
Oh, you know them?
I don't know them, but I know of them. I think I've got a really good pal called Nelson Bragg, who you may know as well. Oh. And Nelson's another guy. You know, he's just got a record out called Gratitude Blues.
Yes.
And,
Nelson, if you're watching, stop smiling.
Nelson went to college with my wife, and it's because of him that she and I met. So, you know, I owe him a
Wow.
great debt of gratitude blues. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I do, you know, I think Julia took the photos at your wedding, yours and, you know, and I'm a friend, I know Julia as well through Nelson, you know,
yes,
so.
she did.
Oh, hell, I might as well just go get some dinner while you guys talk about the wedding.
Yeah, Mark was there. Mark came all the way out from the East Coast to be at our wedding, and I'll never forget that. That was wonderful.
Wow, yeah, no, well, I know Julia showed me the photos. It looked amazing, you know. So congratulations to you, you know, absolutely amazing. But Nelson came over in about 2012 with Brian Wilson. I think it was the Beach Boys' 50th anniversary, and he just got his second album out at the time called What We Want, I think, or What We Want Is What We Get.
What we want.
We get what we want, yeah. And he did a little kind of launch gig where I joined him and a few other guys from the Beach Boys, you know, Scott Bennett and Probin Gregory.
Wow,
And we kind of became friends. And since then, over the last few years, he's been over with a lovely, amazing singer called Annie Chelsea.
Yeah.
And they've got a little trio with a guy called Duncan Maitland, who was in you know his story. So they'd be going out as a trio, and they were in the UK. I joined them for a few gigs, you know, and we just had a laugh. Really, it was great. And then for this particular album, Nelson reached out to me to co-write a song with him. You know, so I feel honored. I've got a co-write with Nelson on his record. You know, so big shout out to Nelson Bragg and Gratitude Blues, and it is an amazing. It's an amazing record. Here it is, you know.
There you go. Take a screenshot.
with the artwork that he did.
Incredible. It's got an Obi strip, you know, fake Obi strip, and a poster, and it's a work of art, you know. It's
awesome.
You know?
It's really wonderful to hear. I mean, like, you're still connected with what's going on now, and you're still a fan, and
you're still so enthused about it. You're enthused and you're into it. It's great. That's what keeps us all.
The most enthused guest we've had. So
well, you know, you guys were saying, weren't you? Really? Yeah. No, I mean, I'll listen to anything that's around. You know, that's kind of, if you've got a love of music from your teen, you still want to know what's going on. I mean, I'm back in the day. I don't know if you did, but at school I used to keep a book of like my own personal top 20 chart. You know, as soon as a Hollies record came out, it went into #1. You know, or the Moon.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
You know, it was so. You know, that doesn't go away. I think we keep that through our lives. Really, you know, that's and. You know, when you can usually hear when a music's coming from a good place. Hey, Rena.
Hi, happy Thanksgiving.
That's Tony Poole from Starry and Laughing.
Hi, Tony.
This has been like the best interview ever.
Awesome.
I recognize you from the photos from your wedding, Rena. So I kind of I knew who you were.
He befriended Nelson, and Julia showed him our wedding photo.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
really nice. That's awesome. Well, Tony, it's been fantastic talking to you. I mean, as of a month ago or so, David, you weren't quite on the schedule yet. And when David said, "Hey, Tony Poole, November 24th," I was like, "Huh?" And
wow.
it really has really been an honor, my friend. Thank you so much.
Likewise,
pleasure.
It's great meeting you. You know, and your enthusiasm feels. You know, thing is, you know, musicians are doing one part of it, but it's people like you that are the other side of that keep all of this stuff going. You know, so thanks to you as well, definitely.
Our pleasure.
Well, Tony, have a great night. Stay happy, stay healthy, keep rocking. Make more music for us. I know it's been 50-something years between albums, but yeah, as I said, you know, we'll wait for the album number 4. If it's going to be another 50 years, it'll be a miracle. But heck.
I've got a solo album half finished coming up.
All right. A solo album?
Yeah, a solo album coming up.
All right, we'll look forward to that.
Yeah. It's fantastic to meet you guys. Thank you.
Have a great night, Tony. We're going to take you out of the thing, and David and I are going to say our good evenings. But God bless you, my friend. Have a super one.
Yes. Stay safe.
Be well. Thank you.
Be well too. Thanks. Bye.
All right, David. That was episode number 28 of Material Issues with the fantastic Tony Poole of Starry Eyed and Laughing.
was
Holy
good.
cow.
I'm like crying. This is like
teary-eyed.
this is like my favorite episode, even though I missed some of it
That's all right.
because of the connection. But man, this has been like my favorite one.
He was he was really something to talk to. He was as I said, he was, yeah, as you said, he was so connected, so enthused, just amazing. Great get, my friend. Great get. And speaking of gets, who do we got coming up?
We got some pretty exciting ones. Next week, December 1st, we have the main man of Bullseye Recordings, member of so many bands, Moving Targets, Mr. Murray, his solo stuff, just all the stuff on Bullseye that came out. And the author of the Canadian Pop Encyclopedia, so the biggest expert in the world on Canadian music. I mean, I think that's undisputed. Mr. Jamie Vernon up next week.
Next Wednesday. Yep.
The following week, we're honored to have a hero of so many pop fans, particularly power pop fans, the owner of 2 top 20 hits, some great albums, still going strong, and he's still on fire, and he don't mind. Dwight Twilley.
Dwight Twilley!
December 8th. That's right.
I mean, that's back-to-back great guests right there. Jamie Vernon and Dwight Twilley. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And so make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe. Join the Facebook group. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tell all your friends. Share it everywhere. Material Issues with myself, Mark Hershberger, and my good friend David Bash, safely back in Los Angeles area.
Safely back in Rena's arms.
Back in Rena's arms again. It's like a Maverick song. Sorry.
That's all right.
My friends, have a fantastic Thanksgiving. We hope everybody out there has a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you're joining family, enjoy. Give everybody a hug. Let them know how much you love them. If you're all by yourself, that's okay too. Be grateful and thankful for the little things, like we all are, and keep smiling. Stay happy, healtty, grateful. Rena, very nice to see you.
You're thankful for your little thing?
That's what now.
That's not what she said, huh?
It's not. Okay. You win the end of the day. All right. It's all good.
Have a great night, Mark.
Have a super night, everybody. Take care. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.